AITA for refusing to let my brother walk my daughter down the aisle because he didn't come to her wedding rehearsal dinner. I, 45M, have a daughter, Anna, 22F, who just got married this past weekend. I've been a single dad since she was 8. Her mom, my ex-wife, walked out when Anna was a kid. She didn't want the responsibility of motherhood and moved across the country. We haven't heard from her in years, so for most of Anna's life, it's just been the two of us. I've done everything I could to make sure she had the best life possible. I coached her soccer teams, learned to braid her hair, I got surprisingly good, helped with science fairs, first dates, breakups, late night, crying spells, college applications, you name it. She's my whole world. When she got engaged last year to her now husband, Matt, I was honored when she asked me to walk her down the aisle. It wasn't even a question in her mind. Now, I have a younger brother, Jason, 38M. We were never super close growing up. He was always more into partying, had a different group of friends, and was just less involved with family stuff. We see each other on holidays and maybe the occasional barbecue. Anna has never been very close with him. He's always been more like the fun uncle who shows up, brings loud energy and a dumb gift, and leaves before it's time to clean up. Last year, Jason got sober after a DUI that nearly cost him his job. He did a full 180, went to rehab, got therapy, joined a group, all of it. He's been open about his recovery and how much he regrets missing out on family time. I respect that. Truly, I've been proud of him. But I also told him that rebuilding relationships takes more than words. When Anna's wedding planning started, Jason wanted to help. He was actually one of the first people to offer. He volunteered to pay for part of the open bar, which felt a little ironic, and even asked if he could have a more active role in the ceremony. At first, Anna didn't really know what that meant, so she said she'd think about it. A couple of months later, she told me Jason had asked if he could walk her halfway down the aisle, and then I would meet them and walk her the rest of the way. I'll admit I was thrown off. That walk was always supposed to be mine. Anna reassured me that it wasn't about taking anything away from me. She said she wanted to honor Jason for trying to be more present. I didn't love the idea, but I told her I would support whatever she wanted. Rehearsal dinner rolls around, and Jason is a no-show. No call, no text, just didn't come. Everyone was confused. I called him, no answer. Anna texted him, nothing. We assumed maybe something came up, but we were all a bit on edge. The next day, he finally texts Anna saying he had a hard night and needed space. No apology, no details, just that. When I followed up, he told me he was feeling emotionally overwhelmed and needed time to himself. I get it. Recovery is a process. But this was a huge night for Anna. Everyone important to her was there. She cried when he didn't show up. She pulled me aside and said she didn't want him to walk with her anymore, that she wanted just me. I agreed with her, and we made the change. I texted Jason and let him know, as gently as I could, that we had decided to have only me walk her. I told him we loved him, and that this didn't erase his progress, but Anna needed to feel safe and supported on her day. He didn't respond. At the wedding, he came late and sat in the back. He didn't say anything to either of us, just left quietly after the reception. A few days later, I got a furious call from my mom saying I had humiliated Jason and punished him for being in recovery. My aunt posted something vague and bitter on Facebook about how families should be forgiving, especially on special days. Apparently, Jason told everyone that I had banned him from walking Anna because of his past and said I didn't believe he had changed. Now I'm getting messages from cousins and family friends saying I could have handled it differently, that I should have given him another chance, that I should have insisted Anna stick with the plan. But Anna's an adult. It was her day. I supported her choice. And frankly, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect someone who wants a major role in a wedding to show up for the rehearsal. Still, the backlash is getting to me. I don't want to hurt my brother, but I also don't think he gets to make this about him. Anna needed stability. I've always been that for her, and I wasn't about to gamble on someone who couldn't even text her back. So, AITA for not letting my brother walk my daughter down the aisle after he goes to the rehearsal dinner. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to let my mom meet my baby after what she did at my wedding. I, 28F, recently gave birth to my first child, a daughter named Ivy. She's 3 months old, beautiful, healthy, and perfect in every way. I'm married to my husband, Kyle, 31M, and we've been together for 6 years, married for 2. Our relationship is strong, supportive, and grounded in a mutual understanding of boundaries, which is something I never had growing up. My mom, Sharon, 54F, has always been intense. Growing up, she was controlling, highly emotional, and had a talent for making everything about her. I was the only child of a single mom, and she used to say we were all each other had as a way to guilt me into doing what she wanted. She hated when I had close friends, dated anyone, or tried to make decisions without her input. Therapy helped me realize a lot about our dynamic, and when I met Kyle, I slowly began to establish boundaries. The major fracture happened at my wedding. I wasn't going to include her in the wedding planning process because I already knew what that would turn into, but I offered her a small role. She could give a toast, something sentimental and short, during dinner. That wasn't enough for her. She wanted to help pick the venue, flowers, my dress, even the guest list. When I calmly said I wanted to plan my wedding with Kyle, she broke down crying, called me ungrateful, and told me I was throwing her away for a man. I stood firm. She eventually said she'd be the bigger person and come to the wedding, but things were tense in the months leading up. She was cold during the rehearsal dinner, barely spoke to my friends or Kyle's family, and kept making snide comments about how different I was acting. The wedding day itself was beautiful for about 20 minutes. Right after we were officially married, as Kyle and I were walking down the aisle together, she stood up and screamed my name. Everyone froze. At first, I thought something was wrong, but she launched into this unhinged speech about how I was abandoning her, how she raised me alone and sacrificed everything, and that she deserved more than a back seat at my wedding. She started crying and shouting about how she wasn't even included in the ceremony. She had been invited to do a reading, which she declined. My aunt tried to pull her away, but she shoved her off and stormed out. The ceremony was derailed. We had to pause everything, and people were whispering and uncomfortable. My Aunt Maya looked horrified. Kyle kept asking if I was okay, and I just remember standing there completely numb. I had tried so hard to avoid something like this, and she still managed to find a way to center herself. We resumed the wedding after a long delay, but the tone was off. It wasn't the same. After the wedding, I cut off contact for almost a year. She sent long letters apologizing if she hurt me, but mostly talked about how humiliated she was and how I had embarrassed her by not letting her have a bigger role. She blamed Kyle for turning me against her and begged me to come home alone. Eventually, I replied with a letter outlining how I felt, what my boundaries were, and that I wasn't interested in resuming a relationship unless she acknowledged what she did and sought professional help. She never responded to that letter. Fast forward to this year, when I had my daughter. We kept the pregnancy private, except from close friends and family. My mom only found out when a distant cousin congratulated her on Facebook, and she messaged me immediately. She said she was hurt, I didn't tell her, that she had a right to meet her granddaughter, and that whatever happened at the wedding shouldn't matter anymore. I ignored the first few messages, but she kept escalating, eventually saying she would never forgive me for keeping her only grandchild from her. I replied and told her I wasn't comfortable with her meeting Ivy, given her history of boundary violations, emotional manipulation, and the disruption at my wedding. I said this wasn't about revenge. It was about safety and stability for my daughter. I told her I might consider a relationship someday if she went to therapy and showed real change, but not now. She lost it. She posted a long rant on Facebook about toxic daughters, how I was using a baby as a weapon, and how mothers should never be discarded like garbage. A few of her friends commented things like, "You were such a good mom, she'll realize it one day," and "grandparents have rights." One even messaged me directly, saying I was cruel for depriving my child of a relationship with her grandmother. Now, even some people I respect are starting to wonder if I'm taking things too far. My dad, who's back in my life after being mostly absent growing up, thinks I should at least let her meet Ivy once and then decide. My therapist says it's okay to maintain boundaries even if it makes others uncomfortable, but part of me feels like I'm being too rigid. I'm trying to protect my daughter from the chaos I grew up with, but now I'm starting to wonder if I've become cold or vindictive in the process. Kyle is fully supportive. He says he saw what she did to me at the wedding and doesn't want Ivy anywhere near that kind of behavior. But even he asked me if I thought this could be a starting point for healing, if I'd be open to meeting her with a therapist or in a neutral setting someday. I don't know. I still see her in my nightmares, storming out of my wedding in front of everyone, screaming about how I owed her my life. I think about Ivy growing up and wondering why she doesn't know her grandma, and I get scared that she'll blame me for that one day. But I also think about the kind of mother I want to be, the kind who protects her child first, even if it's hard, even if it means making unpopular choices. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my mom meet my daughter because of what she did at my wedding and her history of toxic behavior. AITA for telling my brother and his wife they can't live with us after they lost their house, even though we have plenty of room. So here's the deal. I'm a 38-year-old guy, married to my wife, Hannah, who's 36. We have 2 kids, 10 and 7, and live in a 5-bedroom house in a suburb about 30 minutes outside a major city. We moved here 5 years ago after I got a promotion and wanted a better school district for the kids. The house was a stretch at the time, but it's paid off now due to some very careful budgeting, a well-timed refinance, and honestly, a bit of luck. My younger brother, James, 35, and his wife, Cassie, 34, are in a very different place. James has always been more free-spirited. He went to art school, bounced between freelance gigs and bartending for most of his 20s and early 30s. And while he's very talented, he never really made stable income. Cassie is a yoga instructor and part-time retail worker. They don't have kids, but they had a small house closer to the city, which they bought in 2019. About 3 months ago, they lost their house. From what James told me, they got into a really messy adjustable rate mortgage, missed a few payments when Cassie had to cut her hours, and then couldn't catch up. They tried to sell before foreclosure, but the market in their neighborhood dipped, and they still owed more than what they could get. Long story short, the bank took the house, and they were out. They've been bouncing between staying with friends and short-term rentals ever since. A couple of weeks ago, James called me and asked if they could stay with us for a few months while they get back on their feet. He promised they'd get jobs locally, contribute to groceries and bills, and even help with childcare if needed. He emphasized that we have the space, and technically, we do. 1 bedroom is our home office, 1 is a guest room, and the other is a playroom/storage combo. The guest room could easily become their space. But here's where it gets complicated. I told him no, not because I don't care, but because I've seen this movie before. James is a good person, but he has a habit of turning temporary help into a long-term dependency. Back in 2016, he moved in with us when his lease ended unexpectedly and stayed for almost a year, and that was when we were living in a much smaller place. He never paid rent, never really looked for a full-time job, and left a lot of cleanup behind when he finally moved out. Hannah was 6 months pregnant at the time and dealing with morning sickness and still working full-time, and he never once lifted a finger around the house unless asked. Hannah was the one who brought that up when I told her what James wanted. She reminded me of how hard the year was, how many times she had to bite her tongue, and how often she felt like a guest in her own home. She didn't forbid me from helping. She's not that kind of person, but she made it very clear she was not comfortable having to move in. So I called James back and told him we couldn't host them, but I'd be happy to help in other ways. I offered to lend them $3,000 to help with first and last month's rent on a new place, and even offered to co-sign if that was what it took to get approved. He was furious, said I was being selfish, that I was prioritizing space and comfort over family. He said I had no idea what it's like to be truly down and out, and accused me of letting my wife control me. That part really pissed me off. Hannah has been nothing but supportive to both of us, and she has every right to feel safe and at peace in her own home. Cassie sent a long message later that night, basically echoing James, but with more guilt tripping. She said I was letting them fall through the cracks, that they were humiliated to even ask, and now we were turning our backs on them when they needed us the most. She ended the message with, "When your kids are older, I hope they never treat each other the way you're treating James." Since then, it's been radio silence from both of them. My mom has now weighed in, and predictably, she's siding with James. She called me cold-hearted and said I was lucky I never had to learn life's lessons the hard way. I reminded her that I worked 2 jobs to get through college, build a career from scratch, and paid off every cent of my student loans by 30. But to her, James is still the baby, the one who just needs a break. My dad, surprisingly, said nothing, which in his world is basically a sign of approval. He's always been a bit more pragmatic and knows James better than most. Still, the family vibe right now is tense. We weren't a drama-heavy group before this, but now there's this silent Cold War where I feel like I'm the villain. The part that's gnawing at me is that maybe I'm being selfish. We do have space. Our lives wouldn't be ruined by having them here. It would be uncomfortable, yes, but it wouldn't kill us. They're not drug addicts or criminals. They're just people who made bad choices and ran out of options. Maybe family is supposed to be the safety net in moments like this. Maybe I'm putting too much weight on old baggage and not enough on current need. Hannah keeps telling me we made the right call, that we have to prioritize our peace and our kids. She's not trying to be cruel. She just remembers how hard it was last time and doesn't want to go through that again. She says helping financially is still generous and that we're under no obligation to open our home when we know it would strain the marriage or the household dynamic. But still, the guilt is creeping in. I keep picturing James and Cassie crashing on someone's couch, feeling displaced, and wondering if I could have made it easier for them. Even though I know they might have stayed far longer than promised, even though I know Hannah would have had to carry a lot of emotional labor, I still feel like I shut the door too quickly. Was I just protecting my family, or was I abandoning someone I love? AITA? AITA for cutting off my brother after he ruined my wedding because he wasn't the center of attention? I, 27F, got married 3 months ago to my husband Alex, 29M. The wedding was relatively small, about 85 people, close family and friends. We've been planning it for over a year and poured our hearts into the details. It wasn't a massive, over-the-top production, but we wanted it to reflect who we are as a couple. Simple, intentional, and full of love. The whole thing was going beautifully until my older brother Ryan, 32M, decided to make it about him. Let me give a little background. Ryan and I have always had a complicated relationship. We're very different people. He's loud, charismatic, and has always had this need to be in the spotlight. I'm quieter, more reserved. Growing up, it felt like he took up all the oxygen in the room, and I just learned to make myself smaller to keep the peace. It wasn't always toxic, but it was exhausting. Family gatherings were always centered around his latest business venture or drama. My parents, especially my mom, have always enabled it. That's just how Ryan was the go-to excuse. When I got engaged, I was hesitant to involve Ryan in the wedding in a big way. I love him, but I didn't trust him not to make it about himself. My husband felt the same way after spending more time around him. So we decided to keep roles simple. Ryan was a guest, just like everyone else. No best man speech, no special role. We wanted it to be about us, not anyone else. Things were mostly fine in the months leading up to the wedding. Ryan made a few passive-aggressive comments. Must be nice having everything planned just the way you want it. Or, you sure you don't want a little more excitement? But nothing too crazy. I thought we were in the clear. The day of the wedding started off beautifully. The weather was perfect, the venue looked stunning, and everyone seemed genuinely happy. The ceremony made me cry. It was all going perfectly. Then came the reception. About an hour into the reception, we were about to cut the cake when Ryan tapped his glass for attention. I assumed it was just a toast, and I was annoyed because we'd asked people to keep speeches limited to our maid of honor and best man. But before I could stop him, he was standing in the middle of the dance floor, mic in hand. He started off kind of charming, thanking everyone for coming, saying how beautiful everything looked. Then he pivoted hard. Now, I wasn't asked to speak today, he said, which, frankly, hurt a little. But I understand. This day isn't about me. I could feel the tension in the room rise. Alex put his hand on my back, trying to calm me. Ryan went on, "But I can't just sit by and not share some important news with the people I love most." And then he dropped the bomb. He announced that he and his girlfriend Ashley were expecting a baby. Their first. He framed it like a joyful reveal, like it would elevate the mood. He even pulled out an ultrasound photo from his pocket and held it up like a trophy. There was this weird, stunned silence, then scattered claps. My mom gasped and ran over to hug him. My dad stood up and cheered. Meanwhile, I just stood there in my wedding dress, cake knife in hand, completely floored. Alex looked at me and whispered, "Do you want me to say something?" I shook my head because I honestly couldn't believe it had even happened. Ryan spent the next 10 minutes accepting congratulations, posing for pictures with Ashley, and fielding questions about the due date. The attention had completely shifted. Even the DJ played some song he requested, and people started dancing like it was his party. I tried to keep it together, but I felt like I was shrinking again. That old childhood feeling of being invisible. I forced a smile and kept the night going because I didn't want to cause a scene, but inside I was crushed. The photos from the reception show me smiling, but I know that behind those eyes, I was just trying not to cry. After the wedding, I didn't talk to Ryan for 2 weeks. He didn't reach out either. Finally, I called him and told him how hurt I was. His response? "Come on, don't be so dramatic." It was happy news. "You're really going to be mad at me for that? You're already married. You already got your moment." I told him he crossed a line and that he made the night about himself. He said I was being selfish and bitter, that I should be happy for him and not make everything a competition. Since then, we haven't spoken. He's texted a few times about letting it go and moving on, but never an apology. My parents are firmly on his side. My mom told me I was holding a grudge and family is everything. She even suggested I host a baby shower for Ashley to make things right. I told her I wasn't going to reward someone for stealing my moment. Alex is 100% on my side, and most of our friends think what Ryan did was selfish and inappropriate. But my parents' reaction has me second-guessing myself. My mom keeps saying, "It's not like he proposed or something. It's a baby, not a competition." Still, I can't shake the feeling that he knew exactly what he was doing. He brought an ultrasound photo to a wedding he wasn't even giving a speech at. He waited until the reception was in full swing to make the announcement. He didn't tell me ahead of time. He didn't even tell me afterward. He just acted like it was no big deal. I've since told my family that until I get a real apology from Ryan, I'm not interested in repairing the relationship. My mom is livid. She says I'm being cold and that Ryan's going through a lot right now preparing for fatherhood. I told her that's not my problem. I had one day that I wanted to be about me and Alex, and he took it. Now, with the baby due in a few months, there's more pressure than ever to make peace and move forward as a family. But I don't want to. I feel like I finally stood up for myself, and now everyone's mad that I'm not rolling over and making it easy. So, AITA for cutting off my brother after he hijacked my wedding to announce his baby news and never apologized. AITA for canceling my daughter's college fund after she gave her stepdad credit for everything I've done. So, I'm a 45-year-old single dad. Well, I was a single dad for most of my daughter Emma's life. Her mom and I split when she was 4, and she was mostly raised by me. Her mom was pretty absent, only showing up for holidays and the occasional birthday, so I took on full custody. Emma is now 18 and just got accepted into her dream college. I work as an electrician. Nothing glamorous, but I make a decent living. Ever since Emma was little, I've been putting aside a portion of every paycheck into a college fund. I didn't have a college education myself, and I wanted her to have a better shot. I sacrificed a lot. No big vacations, no new truck, no fancy gadgets, just worked and saved and gave everything to my kid. I even passed on promotions that required longer hours or travel, so I could be present at home. When Emma was 12, I met my now wife, Kendra. She's great, very organized and professional. Works in finance, dresses like she stepped out of a catalog, and has a very different background from me. We clicked because we balanced each other. Emma was shy around her at first, but they eventually warmed up to each other, and Kendra made an effort to be involved. She never tried to be Emma's mom, more like a cool aunt or older sister type. We married when Emma was 14. Emma's always been a good kid, quiet, respectful, honor roll student, didn't give me trouble. But over the past 2 years, something changed. She started pulling away from me, spending more time with Kendra, and being more secretive. I chalked it up to teenage growing pains, but it still stung. At family dinners, she'd talk more with Kendra. When people complimented her, she'd joke that she got her discipline from her stepmom. I thought, okay, harmless comment. But then came her high school graduation party last weekend. We hosted a small get-together at our house with friends and family. I had a slideshow running in the background, photos of her from baby to now, memories of the two of us building pillow forts, going fishing, camping trips, her reading on my lap. Emotional dad stuff. At one point, Emma got up to give a thank you speech. She started off sweet, thanking everyone for coming, talking about her excitement for college. Then she launched into a long, emotional tribute to Kendra. She said Kendra taught her what it meant to be organized, to be confident, how to chase her dreams. She called Kendra her rock and her biggest inspiration. I was surprised but still smiling. Then she said something like, "I don't know where I'd be without you, Kendra. You stepped in and became the parent I needed when I didn't have one." That crushed me. I thought maybe I misheard, but then I saw people glance at me awkwardly. My brother gave me this sad look, and my mom touched my shoulder. I didn't say anything at the time, just smiled and clapped. But inside, I was wrecked. Later that night, I asked Emma what she meant. She looked uncomfortable and said she didn't mean it like that, but that Kendra had really helped shape who she was. I told her I understood that, but I was confused by the "when I didn't have a parent" comment. I asked if she really thought I hadn't been there. She got defensive and said she didn't want to diminish my role, but that Kendra helped her become who she is in ways I never could. That she was grateful for me, but she just connected with Kendra more now. I didn't yell. I didn't curse, but I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, okay. The next morning, I emailed the bank and revoked Emma's access to the college fund I'd set up. It's in my name, and I never legally signed it over to her. I didn't clear it out or anything, just made it so she couldn't touch it. I haven't told her yet, but I'm thinking about using the money for something else. Maybe going back to school myself, or starting that small business I always dreamed of. Kendra knows something's up, and when I told her what I did, she looked shocked. She said I was being petty, that Emma's just a teenager figuring out her feelings, and that I can't hold her speech against her. I told her it wasn't just a speech. It was years of watching my daughter drift away, years of being taken for granted while someone else swooped in and got all the credit. Kendra said Emma will be devastated when she finds out, and I said maybe she'll finally understand what I actually did for her. She called me cold and said I needed to think about what message I was sending. My mom and brother think I overreacted too. They said it was a typical emotional teenage moment and that I shouldn't burn bridges over a few poorly chosen words. I asked them how they'd feel if their kid stood up in front of everyone and acted like someone else raised them. That shut them up for a bit. So here I am, sitting with this huge decision and feeling like maybe I went too far. I love my daughter. I always have, but I feel like I've been erased. And now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk for finally saying enough. What do you think? AITA for ruining my sister's wedding by not telling her I was engaged? So, some context first. I, 27F, have always had a pretty complicated relationship with my older sister, Emma, 31F. Growing up, Emma was the golden child. Straight as, valedictorian, homecoming queen, you name it. I was more quiet, more introverted, and way less into the whole performative family thing. My parents didn't exactly ignore me, but there was always this underlying tone of, why can't you be more like Emma? Emma and I were never super close. I don't think we hated each other, but we weren't calling each other late at night or sharing deep secrets. We'd talk at family events, text a few times a month, but that was the extent of it. So when she got engaged last year to her boyfriend of 4 years, Jared, I was genuinely happy for her. I told her that I went to the engagement party and I participated in the bridal shower even though big group events make me anxious. Now, here's where things start to go off the rails. I've been dating my fiancé, Alex, 29M, for about 3 years. He's amazing, funny, kind, just a very solid, calming presence in my life. We've talked about marriage for a while, and earlier this year, he proposed while we were on a hiking trip. It was private and perfect for us, and we didn't feel the need to immediately shout it from the rooftops. We told our close friends and our parents, but didn't make a big social media post or anything. I wasn't hiding it. I just didn't feel the need to broadcast it. I did plan to tell Emma, but between her wedding prep and our minimal contact, I figured I'd wait until after her wedding so I didn't accidentally draw attention away from her. It wasn't some grand scheme or anything. I just didn't think my engagement was something I needed to announce with a press release. Fast forward to the wedding. It was this big, fancy affair with 200 guests, a string quartet, open bar, the whole deal. I was a bridesmaid, and I wore the pastel nightmare she picked out without complaint. Alex came as my plus one. Because it was formal, I wore my hair up, and that's when people started to notice the ring. It wasn't flashy, but it was clearly an engagement ring. At the reception, a few people asked me about it, and I told them the story, thinking nothing of it. We weren't making a scene or anything. It was literally just casual conversation at our table or when someone passed by. But apparently, word got around faster than I realized. Later that night, during the reception, Emma pulled me aside and asked me point blank if I was engaged. I told her yes, and she completely flipped. She accused me of trying to steal her thunder, said I was being selfish and manipulative, and that I should have told her beforehand so she could prepare for it. I was caught completely off guard and tried to explain that I wasn't trying to make it about me and that I honestly didn't think people would even notice the ring. She told me that this was her day, and I had deliberately chosen to upstage her. I said that if I wanted to upstage her, I would have made a toast or something. Instead, I was sitting at my assigned table, talking to the same 3 people all night, and trying not to have a panic attack from the sheer volume of the event. She told me to leave. I didn't want to make a scene, so I quietly grabbed Alex and we slipped out. The next day, I got texts from both my parents telling me that I had ruined the wedding. My mom said I should have taken the ring off for the day. My dad said I should have waited until after the honeymoon to say anything to anyone. I reiterated that I hadn't announced anything, just answered a few direct questions honestly, and that I didn't realize wearing an engagement ring was now a breach of etiquette. Alex is furious on my behalf and keeps saying I did nothing wrong. He also pointed out that Emma hadn't called or texted me once since she got engaged unless it was wedding-related, so her suddenly expecting sisterly loyalty was a bit rich. I want to believe I didn't do anything wrong, but when your entire family is telling you that you messed up, it gets into your head. Some of my friends are split. Half say Emma is being ridiculous and self-centered. The other half say I should have known better and just taken the ring off for the night. One friend said that even though I didn't mean harm, weddings bring out the worst in people, and I should have just played along to avoid drama. So, Reddit, AITA for not telling my sister I was engaged before her wedding and wearing my ring to the event. AITA for refusing to let my husband's adult daughter move in with us, even though she has nowhere else to go. I, 38F, have been married to my husband, 45M, for 6 years. We met when I was 31 and he was 38, and at the time he had a 16-year-old daughter, Leah, from a previous relationship. I don't have children of my own, and I was upfront from the beginning that I didn't want to raise someone else's kid. That sounds cold, I know, but I was clear with him. I told him I could be supportive, kind, and even a mentor of sorts, but I wasn't going to try to be a mom. He said he respected that and wasn't looking for a stepmother for Leah, just a partner for himself. Leah lived with her mother full-time, so I only saw her occasionally when she visited. To put it bluntly, Leah never liked me. I don't think it was ever about me personally. She just didn't want anyone in her dad's life besides her mom. She was polite in front of her dad, but cold to me when we were alone. I always kept it cordial and try not to step on any toes. I respected her space and never tried to involve myself in her life. Over time, I accepted that she just wasn't going to be close with me, and that was okay. My husband told me it would improve over time, but it never really did. After Leah graduated high school, she went to a state university and lived in a dorm. We attended her graduation together, and she barely acknowledged me. Still, I clapped, smiled, and even contributed to a gift card my husband gave her. She moved into an apartment with friends for a while after graduation, and then I didn't hear much about her until last month. Apparently, Leah lost her job back in January. She worked in marketing at a startup and was laid off due to budget cuts. She's been struggling to find another job since. She also broke up with her boyfriend, and her roommates are moving out. According to my husband, she's now in a situation where she can't afford rent, has very little in savings, and nowhere to go. She doesn't want to go back to live with her mom. I don't know why, but something happened between them. So she asked my husband if she could move in with us just for a while. Here's the problem. I don't want her living here. Our house is not huge. It's a comfortable 3-bedroom home, and I've worked really hard to make it feel peaceful and personal. I use the 2nd bedroom as a home office and the 3rd as a reading room/yoga space. I work from home, and having quiet, private space is vital to me. I also like having a home that feels like a sanctuary, something I didn't have growing up. Bringing Leah into this space would be a complete disruption. But more than that, I just don't want to live with someone who clearly dislikes me. Leah doesn't acknowledge me as any kind of family. She has never said a kind word to me in 6 years. I'm not exaggerating. I could deal with that at holiday dinners or short visits, but full-time, under one roof? That's too much. I know she's in a hard place right now, but I don't think I should be expected to sacrifice my comfort and peace for someone who has never treated me like a human being. When my husband brought it up, I told him gently but firmly that I wasn't okay with it. I explained my reasons and said I understood this put him in a hard spot, but that I wasn't comfortable having Leah move in. He got quiet and said he needed time to think. The next day, he came back and said he respected my honesty but felt strongly that he had to help his daughter and that maybe I could compromise and let her stay for just a few months while she got back on her feet. I stood my ground and told him I wasn't comfortable with it, not even for a few months. I reminded him that Leah was never warm to me and made it clear I wasn't family. Now she wants help like I'm suddenly her stepmom or something. I said I would never stop him from helping her. He can give her money, help her find a job, co-sign a lease, whatever, but I didn't want her living in our house. He was really disappointed and said he thought I'd be more empathetic. I told him empathy doesn't mean I have to set myself on fire to keep someone warm. It's been tense ever since. He hasn't pushed it again, but I can tell he's upset. He's quieter, distant. I tried to talk about it again, but he said he didn't want to argue. I asked if he'd be willing to consider another option, like paying for a short-term rental or an Airbnb, and he just shrugged and said, I'll figure something out. I feel like I'm being painted as the evil stepmother, when in reality, I'm just protecting my space and boundaries. Some of my friends say I'm being selfish and that I should just let her stay for a couple of months. They say I knew he had a kid when I married him and that this is part of the deal. But I don't think stepmom should automatically mean emergency housing option. Others agree with me and say Leah is an adult and needs to find her own way and that no one has the right to move into someone else's home uninvited, even if they're family. Now I'm second-guessing myself. I don't want to hurt Leah, and I certainly don't want to hurt my husband. But I also don't want to live in my own home feeling uncomfortable and unwelcome. Is that really so wrong? So, AITA for refusing to let my husband's adult daughter move in with us, even though she has nowhere else to go. AITA for telling my wife she's not the main character of our family and that our kids don't exist to serve her emotional arc. This happened about a week ago, and things are still tense. I, 38M, have been married to my wife Clara, 36F, for almost 14 years. We have 3 kids, Jake, 13M, Lila, 10F, and Emma, 7F. For most of our marriage, Clara has been a devoted mom and a caring partner. She stayed home with the kids for a few years before going back to work part-time as a freelance writer. I've always respected how hard she works and how much she does for the family, especially when the kids were younger. But lately, things have been shifting and not in a great way. Over the past year or so, Clara's gotten deeply into social media, especially Instagram and TikTok. At first, it was harmless, sharing parenting tips, funny stories, and the occasional family pic. But over time, her content has shifted. Now she posts these dramatic monologues about motherhood, overcoming adversity, and finding her truth. She paints herself as a kind of misunderstood heroine, a woman who sacrificed everything for her family and is now reclaiming her identity. The problem is, a lot of her stories are exaggerated or completely reinterpreted versions of what actually happened. For example, She recently posted a video where she talked about a dark period where she felt abandoned and emotionally neglected, referring to the time I was working 60-hour weeks at 2 jobs to help pay for her to go back to school. She said she had no support and was completely alone, which couldn't be further from the truth. I arranged my schedule around her classes, did school pickups, made dinner half the week, and supported her in every way I could. But in her narrative, she was some kind of emotional martyr. It doesn't stop at me, though. She started using our kids as characters in her journey. She shared a story last month about how Lila taught her how to love herself again by asking her why she never smiled anymore. That never happened. She claims Jake became her protector after he started carrying her groceries in from the car. Another one of her TikToks features a story about Emma giving her a handmade bracelet and saying, "So you remember how loved you are?" Again, none of these things occurred, or at least not the way she describes them. They're all reframed to support this narrative of her rebirth and healing. The kids are starting to notice too. Jake recently asked me if he really protected Mom from sadness and said he feels weird being talked about online. Lila said one of her classmates saw her in a video and teased her. Emma doesn't fully understand, but she started copying Clara's dramatic tone when playing with her dolls, saying things like, "I lost myself, but now I'm back." I tried to talk to Clara about it gently a few times. I suggested she could keep her stories more anonymous or at least ask the kids before posting about them. She brushed it off, saying she was telling her truth and that people relate to real, raw experiences. When I mentioned that the kids were uncomfortable, she got defensive and said, "So I'm just supposed to erase my life? My experiences as a mother don't matter now." It always turns into a fight. The breaking point came last weekend. We were at my parents' house for dinner. Clara was quiet most of the evening, which isn't unusual when she's brainstorming a new post or video. After dinner, she asked everyone if we could go around the table and say something meaningful we've learned from her motherhood journey. It was awkward as hell. My dad kind of laughed, thinking it was a joke. My mom said something vague about admiration. The kids were visibly uncomfortable. Jake just shrugged and said, "I guess you're more into social media now." Clara looked heartbroken. She got teary and said, "Wow, I didn't realize I was that invisible to all of you." And then she stormed out to sit in the car. When we got home that night, she confronted me. She said she felt like no one appreciated how much she's been through, that she's finally expressing herself, and it feels like her family wants to silence her. I tried to be calm, but I'd had enough. I told her, "Clara, you're not the main character of this family. You're not in some movie where everyone else exists to reflect your growth. The kids aren't props in your emotional journey. They're real people with their own feelings and identities, and they're starting to feel used." She just stared at me, stunned, and then went upstairs without saying a word. We've barely spoken since. She's still posting, but not as frequently. The tone has shifted. Now it's more about being betrayed by those closest to you. She hasn't mentioned me or the kids directly, but it's obvious she's referring to us. My sister, who follows her, said she's getting a lot of sympathetic comments from people telling her she's a warrior mom and that no one understands the emotional labor of women. Clara seems to be leaning into it even harder now. I feel terrible. I know she's going through something, and maybe this is her way of processing it, but it feels like she's rewriting our lives to fit a narrative where she's always the wounded protagonist. I want to support her, but I also want to protect our kids from being used as supporting characters in something they didn't sign up for. Now my mother-in-law has called me out for being unsupportive of Clara's healing, and my wife hasn't spoken to me beyond necessary logistics. The kids are picking up on the tension and asking questions. So I'm left wondering, was I too harsh? Should I have just let her have her moment? Or am I right to draw the line when our family becomes a backdrop for a storyline we didn't agree to be part of? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to include my stepsister in our sibling tradition and causing a major rift in the family. So, 28F, am the oldest of 4. I have 2 younger brothers, 25M and 22M, and a younger sister, 21F. We're full siblings and have always been very close. We grew up in a pretty chaotic household. Our mom had a lot of health issues, our dad worked long hours, and we often had to lean on each other more than most kids do. It made us tight. And because of all that, we started this little tradition when I was 18 and my youngest sister was 11, a sibling trip. Every year, right around the second week of August, the four of us go somewhere together for a weekend. It started small, local beaches or camping. But as we got older and got jobs, we upgraded to more ambitious trips. Cities, national parks, one year, even Iceland. It's our sibling reset, and we talk about it all year. It's not about the destination. It's about the four of us being together, just us. 5 years ago, our dad remarried. His new wife, Sharon, is fine. I don't dislike her, we're just not close. She's very different from our mom, who passed away 6 years ago, and I think she always felt a little awkward around us. She tried too hard in the beginning and then kind of gave up when we didn't warn her fast enough. I don't blame her. We were still grieving and adjusting. Sharon has a daughter, Lily, 17F now, from a previous marriage. Lily is sweet, a little shy, and pretty introverted. She's very into art and reading, not super social, and definitely more comfortable around adults than peers. When our dad married Sharon, Lily moved in with them, but by that point all of us were either in college or out of the house, so we didn't really grow up with her. She feels more like a cousin than a sister, if that makes sense. Over the years, we've included Lily in some family events, birthdays, holidays, and occasional movie nights when we're all visiting. We've been friendly, but it's always been clear that there's a boundary between us and her. It's not malicious, just the reality of coming into a group of four who've known each other their whole lives and have a very specific dynamic. I've always been polite, supportive, and tried to include her where it made sense. But she's never been part of our sibling trips. Not once. Well, this year, things blew up. In February, we started planning our trip. We decided on a cabin in the Rockies, hiking, board games, hot tub, the works. As usual, the four of us coordinated the details. About a month ago, while visiting our dad and Sharon, the trip came up. Lily was there and got really quiet. Later that night, Sharon pulled me aside and asked why Lily wasn't invited. I explained that it's just something the four of us do, and we've done it for 10 years. It's a tradition and a time for us to reconnect. Sharon said she understood, but that Lily was feeling very left out and was hurt that she wasn't even considered. I said I was sorry Lily felt that way, but it wasn't personal. Sharon pushed back and said that Lily looked up to us, especially me, and felt like she was constantly on the outside. She asked if this year, just this once, we could include her, that it would mean so much to Lily. I told her I'd talk to my siblings. When I brought it up to them, it was a unanimous no. My 22-year-old brother said it bluntly. It's not a sibling trip if she's there. My sister pointed out that it wasn't about excluding Lily, it was about preserving something that belonged to us, especially since it started when we were kids going through a rough time. We all agreed it would change the vibe. And honestly, I felt the same. I called Sharon and told her, as gently as I could, that we decided not to invite Lily. I said it wasn't because we didn't like her, but because the trip was something sacred to us. Sharon was clearly annoyed, but didn't argue. I thought that was the end of it. A week later, I got a long email from my dad. He said he was disappointed in all of us for not being more welcoming. He said he understood tradition, but that family changes and we should make space for everyone. He accused us of clique behavior and said it was hurting Lily deeply. He mentioned that she cried after we left that weekend and said she'd never be a real part of our family. He asked me, begged me, to reconsider and be the bridge between the old and the new. I didn't respond immediately. I felt guilty, but also frustrated. I don't want to hurt Lily, truly, but I also don't want to be guilt into changing something deeply personal to me and my siblings. I talked to them again, and none of us want to include her. Not because we don't care about her, but because it would no longer be the same thing. It would become something else entirely. Since then, it's been tense. Sharon is barely speaking to me. Dad is civil but cold. Lily hasn't reached out at all, which honestly makes me sadder than anything. I feel torn. Am I being too rigid? Should I have just invited her for 1 year? Or is it okay to want to keep something that belongs just to us? So Reddit. AITA for refusing to include my stepsister in our sibling tradition and causing a major rift in the family. AITA for not allowing my sister to bring her service dog to my wedding, even though it caused a massive family fight. So for context, I'm 29F, getting married this fall to my fiancé Dan, 31M, and we've been planning this wedding for over a year. It's not going to be huge, but we're aiming for a small, elegant, and intimate ceremony with about 80 guests at a venue we absolutely fell in love with, a renovated historic estate with a gorgeous garden located about 40 minutes outside the city. Now, here's where things get complicated. My sister Liz, 26F, has a service dog named Harley. Liz has generalized anxiety disorder and PTSD from a really bad car accident 3 years ago. Harley is a golden retriever trained to help her manage panic attacks and to interrupt dissociative episodes. He's legit, wears a vest, and has papers and all. He's a wonderful dog, incredibly well-behaved, and has made a huge difference in her life. I love my sister. We were super close growing up, and I was there for her during the early stages of her recovery. But in the last couple of years, things have changed. Liz has become very focused on her therapy and healing, which is obviously great, but it's also made her increasingly distant from the rest of us. She's turned down family trips, skipped holidays, and often won't attend events unless they're on her terms. It's not malicious, but it's been hard to navigate. When we sent out our wedding invitations, I wrote a separate message to Liz explaining that while I really wanted her there, the venue has a strict no animals policy. I'd already worked hard to get permission for Dan's grandma to bring her oxygen tank, and the estate owners were very clear they weren't comfortable with animals, even service animals, because of liability issues, past damage, allergies, and one incident a few years ago involving a service dog getting into a scuffle with a child at another wedding. I asked Liz if she would be willing to attend without Harley for just the ceremony and part of the reception, maybe having someone sit with Harley at a nearby hotel or even outside in a shaded area with breaks. She said no. She told me that going anywhere without Harley is non-negotiable, that even for a few hours, she wouldn't be comfortable and that she was shocked I would ask. She told me it felt like I was choosing aesthetics over her mental health. I tried to explain it wasn't about looks or vibes. It was about the venue's rules and the fact that I'm trying to make this work for a lot of people. I even offered to pay for her and Harley to stay nearby and suggested she come for just a rehearsal dinner instead if she really couldn't attend the wedding. Liz broke down crying on the phone and told me that I was excluding her from the most important day of my life over something she can't control. She said I was discriminating against her disability and that I clearly didn't understand the seriousness of what she's been through. The situation escalated quickly. My mom got involved and took Liz's side completely. She called me the next day and said she couldn't believe I was doing this to my own sister and that weddings are about family and not about rigid rules. She said if I didn't find a way to accommodate Liz and Harley, she might not come either. Then my dad called, trying to mediate, but even he seemed a little disappointed in my decision. Dan has been supportive, but I can tell even he's starting to feel like maybe I should just bend the rules. A few of my friends say it's my wedding and I have the right to set boundaries, especially if I've genuinely tried to find a compromise. But others are saying it looks really bad that I'm not making an exception for a medical necessity, even if the venue is strict. The final straw came when Liz posted, vaguely, on Facebook about how people who claim to support mental health are often the ones who quietly exclude you when it's inconvenient. A bunch of people commented supportive things, and now even some extended family members are asking me what's going on. I feel completely torn. I never wanted this to become a battle. I just wanted a day where everyone felt happy and safe and things went smoothly. I don't know if I'm making the right call anymore. But I also feel like this isn't a simple yes/no decision and that people are acting like it is. Am I the asshole for not allowing my sister's service dog at my wedding due to venue rules, even though it means she might not come at all? AITA for telling my sister she's not welcome at my wedding? I, 28F, am getting married in a few months, and recently I've had a falling out with my sister, 30F. It's a long story, but I'll try to keep it brief. We've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, we didn't get along very well. She was the perfect child, always getting good grades, excelling in everything she did, and my parents adored her. I was the problem child who struggled in school, got into trouble, and didn't seem to be able to live up to her standards. It was hard for me to compete, and honestly, I never felt like I was as good as she was. As we got older, we started to drift apart. I went to college far away from home, and she stayed close to our parents. We didn't keep in touch much, and when we did, it was mostly small talk. The tension from our childhood was still there, but it was bearable, at least for me. Then, a couple of years ago, I met my fiancé, Jake, 31M. He's wonderful, funny, kind, hardworking, and supportive. I couldn't imagine my life without him. I invited my sister to meet Jake when we first started dating, hoping it would be a good way to bridge the gap between us. Unfortunately, it did the opposite. She was rude to him from the moment they met. She made snide comments about his job. He's a mechanic. His clothes, even his accent. Jake was polite and didn't engage, but it was clear to me that she was judging him, and I felt embarrassed. I let it slide, though, because I didn't want to cause a scene. Over time, her behavior got worse. Every time we had a family gathering, she'd make passive-aggressive remarks about Jake, like how he was just a mechanic or how I deserved better. It was really hurtful, and I tried talking to her about it, but she would always brush me off, saying I was being too sensitive and that she was just looking out for me. Things reached a breaking point when we were planning the wedding. I had decided on a small, intimate ceremony with close family and friends. I sent out invitations a few months ago, and at first, everything seemed fine. But then my sister started making a scene about my guest list. She insisted that I had to invite some of her friends who I barely knew, and when I refused, she made a big deal about how I was being selfish and disrespectful to her. I told her that it was my day, and I wanted to keep it small, and she didn't take it well. The final straw came when I told her that I was not comfortable with her being involved in any part of the wedding, including the rehearsal dinner. She asked why, and I explained that her behavior toward Jake had made me feel like she wasn't being supportive of me and my relationship. I told her that I couldn't have someone who disrespected my fiancé and our life together at such an important event. She got really upset and accused me of choosing him over her. She said that it wasn't fair for me to make her choose between family and some guy. I tried to explain that this wasn't about choosing anyone over anyone else. It was about having a wedding that celebrated the people who truly supported and respected us. She didn't listen and kept pushing for a bigger role, even demanding to be a bridesmaid, despite never offering any support or kindness to Jake. Eventually, I just said, if you can't respect my fiancé, then I don't think you're welcome at the wedding at all. That was when she lost it. She started crying, saying I was being dramatic and that she was just looking out for me. She told me I was making a huge mistake, and that if I didn't let her be a part of the wedding, she would never forgive me. I stood my ground, and after a lot of back and forth, I ended up telling her I was done arguing. I told her that if she couldn't respect my wishes, then she wouldn't be attending. Since then, I've felt incredibly guilty. I know it was a harsh thing to say, but at the same time, I've been so stressed about planning the wedding that I don't have the energy to cater to her demands. I want to make this day about the people who truly care about me and Jake, and right now, my sister doesn't feel like one of those people. I've talked to a few of my friends and family members, and some are supportive of my decision, but others think I've gone too far and that I should make up with my sister for the sake of family. Some have even suggested that I'm being too harsh on her, considering she's my only sister and family is important. I've been feeling a lot of pressure and guilt, but at the same time, I just don't feel like I can let her disrespect my fiancé and our relationship anymore. So, AITA for telling my sister she's not welcome at my wedding. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me because of my lifestyle choices. So, a bit of background. I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I have an older sister, Emma, who's 32. We've always had a somewhat complicated relationship. We were close growing up, but as we got older, we started to drift apart. We've had disagreements here and there, but overall, it was more of a typical sibling dynamic. About a year ago, Emma got engaged to her now fiancé, Ryan. I've met him a couple of times, and we get along okay, but it's never been anything spectacular. Ryan's a nice enough guy, but we don't have a ton in common. When they announced their engagement, I was happy for them, but I also felt a little weird because Emma didn't exactly tell me she was getting engaged before announcing it publicly. But I let that slide and started to focus on supporting her as much as I could. Now, to get to the meat of the story, I've been in a long-term relationship with my partner, Ava, for about 4 years. We're both women, and while I don't make a point to broadcast it to everyone, I also don't hide it. We're not out there waving rainbow flags, but we also don't shy away from talking about our relationship if it comes up. We've attended family gatherings, holidays, and whatnot, and generally, things have been fine. I assumed Emma would be perfectly fine with my relationship, even if she had some reservations. I mean, we're family, right? Things started to take a turn when the wedding planning began. I was initially excited, but then Emma started mentioning her vision for the wedding. She had a very specific idea of what she wanted it to be like, and she'd constantly bring it up in our conversations. For example, she wanted it to be a traditional ceremony, which I assumed meant a typical heterosexual ceremony. No big deal. But then, Emma started mentioning how important it was for the wedding to have the right vibe. She talked a lot about her need to make sure the family's values were respected, and at first, I didn't think much of it. But as we got closer to the date, Emma started making some comments that really rubbed me the wrong way. One day, I was at her place, helping her with some wedding planning stuff. She casually asked me if Ava and I would be bringing our lifestyle to the wedding. I was a little confused by her wording and asked her to clarify. She said, just like, are you going to act all PDAY? We don't want that kind of thing at the wedding. It's not really the atmosphere I'm going for. I was taken aback, but tried to remain calm. I told her that we wouldn't do anything inappropriate, but if we wanted to hold hands or kiss, that would be her choice. She seemed to get frustrated and said, I just don't want it to be a distraction. That should have been my first red flag, but I didn't think it was worth making a big deal about at the time. I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was just feeling the pressure of wedding planning. But then, things escalated. A week later, she called me and asked if I could maybe come without Ava. She said it would make her feel more comfortable since the whole gay thing might make some people uncomfortable. At first, I thought she was joking, but when I realized she wasn't, I got upset. I told her that Ava and I come as a pair, and it wasn't negotiable. She responded by saying, well, I've been talking to some of the relatives, and they're not sure about your relationship. I just want everything to go smoothly. I could tell she was getting increasingly uncomfortable talking about it, and so was I. I told her that I wouldn't attend the wedding without Ava. We'd been together for years, and we were a family, and I wasn't going to pretend we weren't. I also told her that I was really hurt by her request, and I didn't think it was something I should even have to explain. Emma then said something that shocked me. She said, if you can't respect my wishes, then maybe you shouldn't come to the wedding at all. I was floored. I couldn't believe she was saying this. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to cause drama, but that I couldn't just pretend to be someone I wasn't for the sake of her wedding. She said it wasn't about that. It was about making sure things didn't get awkward. I told her that I wasn't going to be part of a wedding where I felt unwanted and disrespected. We argued for a while, and in the end, I decided to stick to my guns and told her I wouldn't be attending. I don't think she understood why I was so upset. She said she didn't want to cause drama, but that she had to think about the whole family. I haven't heard from her since that conversation. She hasn't reached out to apologize or even explain herself further. I'm starting to feel like I made the wrong choice. I've had a few family members message me to say that Emma is devastated by my decision, and some have even implied that I'm being unreasonable. They've told me that I should just let it go for one day, and that family is family. But I just don't feel like I should have to choose between my relationship and my family. I know I'm probably not the first person to face this kind of thing, but I'm really struggling with whether or not I made the right call. I want to be supportive of my sister, but I also can't ignore how hurt I feel by her disinviting me because of my lifestyle. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she disinvited me because of my relationship. AITA for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay at my house after she got kicked out of her own home. I, 30F, am married to my husband, Mark, 32M, and we have a 2-year-old son, Ethan. Our home is modest, but we've always been happy here, and we take pride in keeping it organized and comfortable. Recently, There's been a lot of tension in my family due to my sister-in-law, Jess, 28F, and I need to know if I'm in the wrong here. Jess has always been a bit difficult. To put it simply, she's an adult who still expects others to take care of her. She's bounced between various friends' houses and even lived with her parents in the past, but it seems like she can't hold down a job or maintain any kind of stable living situation for long. 4 years now, she's been in and out of bad relationships, and she always seems to find herself in trouble. Mark and I have helped her out on several occasions, offering her a place to stay for a few weeks, helping her with groceries, and even giving her small loans that she rarely pays back. Each time, she promises things will change, but they never do. About a month ago, Jess got kicked out of her most recent boyfriend's apartment after a massive argument. She called Mark, desperate for a place to crash. I was at home with Ethan, so Mark talked to me about it. I told him I wasn't comfortable with it, especially since Jess has stayed with us a few times in the past, and it always leads to conflict. She never cleans up after herself. She spends most of her time on her phone or napping, and she makes no effort to contribute to the household. When she stays with us, Mark and I are constantly arguing because of her behavior, and I didn't want to go through that again. Mark, however, insisted that we should help her out, as she had nowhere else to go. I relented, but only under the condition that Jess would have to respect some house rules. I told Mark that I wasn't okay with her bringing over random people or staying up late making noise, and that I expected her to clean up after herself and pitch in with the chores. Mark agreed and promised to talk to her about it. Jess moved in a few days later. The first few days went relatively smoothly. Jess was quiet, kept to herself mostly, and didn't cause much trouble. But within a week, things started to fall apart. She started staying up late, talking loudly on the phone with her friends. It wasn't unusual for her to have a few friends over in the evenings, and I'd find myself stepping in to ask them to leave at 1 or 2 a.m. because Ethan was still trying to sleep. Then, she started leaving dirty dishes in the living room, and the bathroom became a disaster. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying she'd get to it later. It all came to a head last week when Jess had a guy over, and they were being pretty loud late at night. I asked her politely to keep it down, and she gave me this look like I was overreacting. I reminded her about our house rules and asked her not to bring anyone over without checking in first. She told me that it wasn't a big deal and that I was being too controlling. Mark didn't see it as a big issue, but I was fuming. I told him I couldn't take it anymore and that Jess needed to leave. He tried to talk me down, but I stood firm. I felt like I was being disrespected in my own home, and I was no longer willing to tolerate it. That's when things got really messy. Mark tried to get Jess to leave, but she refused. She said that I was being unreasonable and that she had nowhere else to go. Mark argued with me, saying that Jess was family and that we should give her a little more grace. I said that I had already given her more than enough grace and that it wasn't my responsibility to let her live off of us while she continued to make no effort to change her situation. The argument got heated, and Mark eventually stormed off, telling me that I was being too harsh and that I was pushing Jess out when she needed us the most. After a few hours of silence, Jess came into my room and tried to talk to me. She told me I was being a terrible sister-in-law and that I'd regret not helping her when she needed it. I tried to explain that I wasn't refusing to help her, but that she needed to follow basic rules and respect our space. She refused to see it my way and said that I was being selfish. Eventually, I asked her to pack her things and leave. She left the next morning, and it hasn't been the same between me and Mark since. Mark is still upset with me. He thinks I was too harsh and that I should have put up with Jess for a little longer because she was in a bad spot. He says I could have been more patient, but I feel like I've been more than patient with her over the years. I let her stay in our home multiple times, and each time, things only get worse. I don't feel like it's my responsibility to continue enabling her behavior, especially when it's negatively affecting my own family. The thing is, we've had a lot of arguments about Jess, and I'm starting to feel like I'm being asked to choose between my own peace and her. Mark thinks I should have sacrificed my peace for her, but I don't agree. I don't think I should have to keep tolerating disrespect in my own home just because she's family. Now, my in-laws are on Jess's side, and they've been giving me the cold shoulder. They think I'm being too hard on her, and that I should have been more supportive. Mark and I have had several long discussions about this, but we're still at an impasse. He's frustrated with me, and I'm frustrated with him. We don't seem to agree on the best way to handle this. So, AITA for refusing to let Jess stay at our house after she was kicked out, even though she had nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding because she didn't invite my kids. So, a bit of background. I, 32F, have 2 kids, a 5-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy. My husband, 33M, and I have been married for 7 years. And while we don't have a huge social circle, we've always made it a point to include our immediate families in major life events. We have a good relationship with both of our families, but there have been some tensions over the years, especially with my sister, 28F. I've always been close to my sister, but as we've gotten older, we've drifted apart a little. She's always been a little self-centered and tends to make everything about her. I guess it's not entirely her fault, but it has caused a lot of frustration in our relationship. I'm not trying to bash her. She's a good person, but she's very focused on her own life and problems, and she expects everyone to prioritize her needs above others. About a year ago, my sister got engaged to her long-term boyfriend. They've been together for about 4 years, and I was genuinely happy for her. I was really excited about her wedding and was fully prepared to help her with anything she needed, planning, decorations, anything. However, things took a weird turn when she sent out the wedding invitations. She sent me an invite and mentioned that she was only inviting immediate family and a handful of close friends. Now, I get that weddings can be stressful, and I understand that she might not want to invite too many people. But then I noticed something. She had invited all of our extended family. Our cousins, aunts, uncles, and even a few distant relatives, and yet my kids were excluded. This didn't sit well with me. My sister didn't say anything about the kids not being invited, but the invitations were clearly just for her and her fiancé's side of the family, and my children weren't on the guest list. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt at first, thinking maybe it was a mistake or that she simply didn't think about it. So I asked her about it. Her response was kind of cold and dismissive. She said that her wedding would be a very adult affair and that she wasn't inviting any children, including mine. I was taken aback by this because, let's be honest, my kids are well behaved. They've been to weddings before without causing any issues, and I know a lot of people who bring their kids to weddings. It's not unusual. I tried to have a calm conversation with her, explaining how hurtful this was and how it made me feel like she was choosing her friends over family, especially when it came to my children. She told me that it was her wedding, her rules, and that I should respect her decision. She also mentioned that if I wasn't happy with the arrangement, I didn't have to come at all. This is where I started to feel a little bit like she was testing me. I didn't want to make a huge issue out of it, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel like she was excluding my kids for no real reason other than her own preferences. I was upset, but I tried to let it go for a while, thinking that maybe she would change her mind or realize how hurtful it was to leave out her niece and nephew. A few weeks later, she texted me again, just to make sure I was clear about her wishes. She said, "Just so we're clear, the wedding is kid-free. If that's going to be a problem for you, you don't have to attend." This felt like a final warning, and it stung. It was as if she was giving me an ultimatum. Either leave my kids behind or don't come at all. I felt like I had been put in an impossible position. I wasn't about to leave my children with sitter for a whole day just so I could attend a wedding where I felt unwanted. And let's be honest, if I had gone and left them at home, it would have just created more tension between my husband and me. It would have been a constant reminder that I was being asked to choose between my family and my sister, and that didn't sit right with me. I ended up sending my sister a message explaining that, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to attend her wedding without my kids. I told her that I respected her decision to have a child-free event, but I also had to put my children first. I told her I hoped she understood that this wasn't about not supporting her, but about the reality of our lives as parents. I expressed that I was really hurt by her decision and that it made me feel like I wasn't being considered in the way I should have been as her sister. She didn't take it well. She called me up, saying that I was being selfish and that I was making her wedding about me. She said I was overreacting and that if I truly cared about her, I'd find a way to make it work. I ended up hanging up on her because it became clear she wasn't hearing me. A few days later, she sent me a message saying that it was clear I wasn't going to attend and that I had made my decision, so I shouldn't expect to be involved in any of the wedding festivities leading up to it. At this point, I'm genuinely questioning whether I did the right thing. I love my sister, but I also love my children, and I don't want to feel like I'm being forced to pick between the two. I understand that weddings are stressful, and I know she has a vision for her big day, but it just feels like she's prioritizing her own comfort over our relationship. I want to be supportive, but I also feel like she's drawing a hard line in the sand and making it impossible for me to be there for her. So, AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding because she didn't invite my kids? Or am I overreacting and making this into something it doesn't need to be? AITA for not inviting my brother to my wedding after he made me feel like a second-class citizen for years? For some background, I, 28F, have a brother, been 30M, who's been a huge part of my life, but not in a good way. We grew up in a fairly average family with loving but busy parents. From an early age, I learned that Ben was the golden child. He was always the one who got the better grades, who excelled in sports, who was the one people looked to for approval, and so on. It was like everything he did was somehow more important than what I did. My parents were proud of me, but it always felt like they were prouder of him. And if you were ever in a room with both of us, it was obvious who got the attention. I'll be honest, it bothered me. Not in the way that a little sibling rivalry does, but in a deep, painful way that made me feel invisible at times. As we got older, I felt like it wasn't just about being the better kid, but that Ben actively made me feel small. For instance, he would often joke about how boring I was compared to him, calling me out in front of friends and family about how I had no personality. Even when I made achievements of my own, like graduating college with honors or getting a promotion at work, he would downplay it and somehow make it seem less impressive than whatever he was doing at the time. A lot of people in my life have always told me I should confront Ben about how he makes me feel, but I never did. It's hard to speak up when your sibling is so much more socially skilled, confident, and just liked by everyone. But eventually, I just started internalizing it and learned to take care of myself emotionally. When I got engaged to my fiancé, Ryan, I felt excited but also a little apprehensive. I wasn't sure if I should invite Ben to my wedding. It wasn't because I didn't want him there per se, but more because of how our relationship had been over the years. I was worried that, on such an important day, he would somehow make me feel like I didn't measure up again. Ryan encouraged me to invite him, saying that it was my day, and it would mean a lot to have my brother there. I reluctantly agreed. I even told my parents I was nervous about how Ben would behave, but that I still wanted him at the wedding. My parents assured me he would be fine, so I decided to go ahead and send him the invite. Things took a turn in the months leading up to the wedding, though. Ben, who had initially said he was excited to come, started showing his true colors. He made some passive-aggressive comments about the wedding planning, specifically targeting me. For example, when I was showing him my wedding dress options, he snickered and said, "Well, I hope you don't trip on that thing." Another time, he mocked the idea of having a simple wedding and suggested that we should have gone bigger if we wanted it to be memorable. I brushed it off, but it stung. As the wedding day drew closer, I tried to keep a positive mindset, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Ben was intentionally trying to undermine me. It was his little jabs, his comments about how everything could be better and how my wedding wasn't up to his standards. I couldn't take it anymore, so I talked to Ryan about how I was feeling. Ryan was incredibly supportive and told me that if I didn't want Ben there, he understood. Ryan and I had a long discussion about it, and after much thought, I decided to uninvite Ben. I knew it was a huge decision, but I felt like my wedding day should be about celebrating my relationship with Ryan, not constantly dealing with my brother's disrespect. I sent Ben a text that said, "Hey Ben, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've decided to have a smaller, more intimate wedding. I've decided to keep the guest list limited, so I'm afraid I won't be able to invite you. I hope you understand." I didn't hear back from him for a few days, and I thought maybe it was just a matter of him processing it. But when he did respond, it was angry. He called me selfish, saying that I was throwing away family over some petty issues. He accused me of holding grudges and that I was being overly dramatic about things, he said. He also said that if I couldn't even invite my own brother to my wedding, then I clearly didn't care about family, and he'd never forgive me for it. I didn't respond to him after that. because I didn't think there was anything more to say. At the wedding, everything went smoothly. It was an intimate and joyful day for me and Ryan, and I'm really glad I made the decision to keep it small. My parents were disappointed that Ben wasn't there, but they didn't push me to change my mind. I'm sure they felt caught in the middle, but they respected my decision. Now, several weeks after the wedding, Ben has been even colder toward me, refusing to answer my calls or texts. My parents are frustrated with me, saying that I should just reach out to Ben and smooth things over, but I'm still upset by how he treated me leading up to the wedding. I'm wondering if I was too harsh. I'm well aware that family dynamics can be complicated, and I don't want to cause a permanent rift. But at the same time, I feel like I had to protect myself. My wedding was one of the most important days of my life, and I wasn't going to let Ben turn it into another moment where I felt less than. AITA for uninviting my brother to my wedding after everything that's happened? Should I just sucked it up and invited him? Or was I right to put my boundaries first? AITA for telling my sister that her free spirit lifestyle is just an excuse to be irresponsible? I, 28F, have an older sister, 31F, named Amelia, who I've always considered to be a bit of a free spirit. She's always been the type to go with the flow, embrace whatever life throws at her, and just generally live with a carefree attitude. On the surface, it seems fun and spontaneous, but over the years, I've started to notice that her free spirit persona has been less about living with no worries and more about avoiding responsibility altogether. I'm not saying that life has to be all about structure, but there comes a point where being irresponsible becomes a problem, especially when it affects other people. A couple of years ago, Amelia made the decision to quit her job as a marketing coordinator to pursue her passion of traveling and writing. At first, I thought it was a cool idea. She had been talking about it for years, and I could see the appeal. But after a few months, things started to get weird. Instead of working on her blog, getting gigs, or making money from her travels, she was constantly moving between friends' houses, living out of a suitcase, and posting a lot of cryptic Instagram stories about finding herself. She'd occasionally send out a newsletter where she'd write about random experiences and deep philosophical thoughts, but it was clear to me that she wasn't really building anything long-term or sustainable. Fast forward to now, and things have gotten even worse. Amelia has been living off the kindness of friends and strangers for over 2 years, always promising that something big is coming, whether it's a book deal, a major travel collaboration, or a new business venture. The problem is nothing ever materializes. She's had a string of odd jobs here and there, waitressing, babysitting, teaching yoga, but nothing that shows she's really committed to anything. And to be honest, it's starting to feel like she's using the free spirit excuse to avoid adult responsibilities. The tipping point for me came recently. I got married last year, and my husband and I moved into a new house. We invited Amelia to come stay with us for a few weeks while she sorted out her next travel plans. She's always been a bit of a wanderer, so we thought a temporary stay wouldn't be a big deal. But it turned into several months. And not only did she not contribute to anything, helping with chores, offering to pay rent, or even getting groceries, but she also didn't even seem to care that we were both working full-time jobs. She would lounge around the house all day, sometimes go out for coffee or meet up with friends, and then be gone for days at a time. She'd come back, stay for a bit, and then disappear again. I know she's my sister, and I love her, but at some point, I started to get really frustrated. I was paying for most of the household expenses, trying to balance a new marriage, a career, and all the typical grown-up responsibilities, while she acted like she was on an endless vacation. A few weeks ago, things came to a head. We were having a family dinner, and Amelia started talking about this new idea she had for a self-help blog she wanted to launch. She said it was going to be her big break, and she just needed a little more time and space to focus on it. When I asked her how long she had been working on it, and whether she was actually making any progress, she got defensive and said I didn't understand the creative process. That's when I lost it. I told her that her free spirit lifestyle wasn't as glamorous as she made it out to be. I said she was using it as an excuse to avoid being a responsible adult, and that it was unfair for her to keep mooching off other people, especially when she wasn't contributing anything in return. I pointed out that if she really wanted to make something of herself, She needed to stop hiding behind her bohemian lifestyle and take some concrete steps to build a career or at least support herself. She got really upset. She accused me of being too rigid and judgmental and said I couldn't appreciate how difficult it was to follow your dreams and live authentically. She said I was trapped in a corporate rat race and had no idea what it was like to be truly free. My mom, who's always been more lenient with Amelia, jumped in and tried to mediate, but it only made things worse. She said I was being unfair to Amelia and that I should support her decisions and trust that she'd figure things out on her own. Now, my whole family is upset with me. They think I'm being harsh and unsupportive and that I should respect Amelia's life choices. My husband thinks I was in the right to stand up for myself, but he's worried about how much tension this has caused in the family. Amelia hasn't spoken to me in days, and I'm starting to feel like maybe I was too hard on her. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my sister, but at the same time, I don't think I can keep pretending that her free-spirited lifestyle is just a fun phase. It's affecting everyone around her, and it's frustrating to feel like I'm the only one who sees it for what it is. So, AITA for telling my sister that her lifestyle is just an excuse for being irresponsible. AITA for refusing to give my friend a loan for her wedding after she borrowed money from me multiple times. So a bit of context. I'm 29, and I have a close friend, Mia, who I've known since we were in middle school. Over the years, we've been through a lot together, and we've always been there for each other. However, in recent years, I've noticed a pattern with Mia that's starting to really frustrate me, and I don't know if I'm being unreasonable about it. Mia comes from a well-off family, but she's always lived beyond her means. She's constantly buying things she can't afford, going on vacations she doesn't have the budget for, and throwing extravagant parties. It's like she doesn't know the meaning of saving up or living within her means. The thing is, whenever she gets herself into a financial bind, she comes to me for help. And I'm not talking about small amounts. It's usually a few $1,000s. I've helped her out a few times because I genuinely care about her, and I understand that sometimes life happens, but after a few instances, it started to feel like she was just using me. At first, I didn't mind because I thought of it as helping a friend who was in a tough spot. But then it started to feel like a pattern. She would borrow money, promise to pay me back, and then find excuses for why she couldn't. It's been the same thing every time. She'd ask for a loan, I'd say yes, and then months later, I have to remind her to pay me back, and she'd say, "Oh, I'm just really tight on money right now, but I'll get it to you soon." It's been like that for a few years now. Here's where it gets tricky. Mia is getting married in a couple of months, and the wedding is going to be ridiculously expensive. She's been talking about it nonstop, and I can tell she's stressed out about the costs. A few weeks ago, she came to me and asked if I could lend her $10,000 to help cover some of the wedding expenses. She explained that she was short on funds and that her family wasn't able to help as much as she'd hoped. Of course, she promised she'd pay me back. I felt conflicted because I've always been there for her, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore the fact that she's never really paid me back for any of the previous loans. I told her that I needed some time to think about it, and she immediately got upset, saying that she felt like I didn't support her and that I was letting her down during one of the most important times in her life. She said, "If you can't help me, I don't know who else will. You know, I would do the same for you if the roles were reversed." I do understand that weddings are expensive and that she's under a lot of pressure, but something just felt off about the whole situation. I spent the next few days thinking it over, and eventually, I told her that I couldn't loan her the money. I explained that it wasn't that I didn't want to help, but I couldn't afford to keep giving her money that I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. I also told her that, to be honest, I was getting tired of being put in a position where I had to continually help her out of financial problems that seemed to be self-inflicted. I told her that if she needed help, she should talk to her family or maybe cut back on some of the extravagant wedding plans. She didn't take it well. She got angry and said I was being selfish and that I was only thinking about myself. She accused me of holding her back and said that if I truly cared about her, I would do whatever it took to help her get the wedding she always dreamed of. She also made me feel guilty by saying that I was ruining her happiness during a time that should be about celebrating love. I feel bad because I know she's going through a lot and I care about her, but at the same time, I feel like this has gone too far. I've helped her out more times than I can count, and I'm starting to feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I know weddings are important, but I also feel like she needs to learn to be more financially responsible. I don't think it's fair that she keeps coming to me for money that I don't have to spare, especially when she's never paid me back for past loans. Now, our friendship is really strained. She's been distant and hasn't spoken to me much since our conversation. I've been wondering if I should have just given her the money, even though I really didn't want to. I'm feeling conflicted because I don't want to lose her as a friend, but I also don't want to be treated like a bank. So, AITA for refusing to give my friend the loan for her wedding after everything that's happened in the past? Should I have just helped her out one last time, or am I justified in saying no this time? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.